The Buried Mirror by Carlos Fuentes, pages 43 through 46. Spain's destiny is inseparable from the Mediterranean. The sea, in a certain sense, begins and ends in Spain. The Mediterranean is entered from the Atlantic by Andalusia, but before Christopher Columbus, no one came from the Atlantic to the Mediterranean. During many and many centuries, Spain was the only port of departure from the Mediterranean. But what was there after the Mare Nostrum? Our sea, as the Romans called it, is entered from the Atlantic through the Pillars of Hercules, and before the Suez Canal there was no other way to leave it. Today, this port of ingress and egress is called Gibraltar, in memory of the Berber ringleader that invaded Spain from Africa in 711. But for the modern world, Gibraltar is a name associated with the rock and with insurance policies, but above all, with the British policy of maintaining the Mediterranean open for commerce and naval movements. In reality, as so many things, Brigies, it is an anachronism. But Gibraltar reminds us that for centuries, the Mare Nostrum was the geographic center where Europe, Asia, and Africa met each other, and where their civilizations were cross-fertilized. Philosophy, literature, politics, commerce, war, religion, and art. No single facet of the common civilization of Europe, Asia, and Africa would be understandable without the form that were impressed upon it by the shores of the Mare Nostrum. Mediterranean man was able to be brave enough to explore timidly the African coast toward the south. But toward the west, there was nothing except fear and mystery. Not our sea, but the sea of mystery, mare ignotum. With such luck, Spain, in reality, was converted into something like the box without exit of the Mediterranean. It was possible to move toward the west until Spain and stop there. There was nothing more beyond Spain, and one of the most western points of the peninsula, appropriately, is called the Cape Finisterre, the Cape of the End of the World. Spanish culture was determined at the most high level by this finality, this eccentricity of its geographic position. To arrive in Spain meant to remain there, because there was nothing after Spain except the option of a return trip to the east from where one had departed. This double movement gave form to two Spanish cultures: a profound agrarian culture turned its back on the sea. This was the culture of the Iberians. The Ebro, or the river of the Iberians, was its habitat, and Iber means river, so that to give prologue to the Joycean pun, the origin of Spain is a Iber river. The Iberians arrived in the peninsula more than 2,000 years before Christ from the south. 900 years before Christ, they encountered the Celts, arrived from the north, and they joined with them to create the Celtic Iberian culture that constituted the heart of the profound agrarian civilization of Spain, alive until today. A culture of shepherds and villages of peasants and tribal instincts, fed by meat, cheese, and bread. Its isolation was growing while the Mediterranean plain of Catalonia and Andalusia was converted into a necklace of foreign peoples, marketplaces, and commercial ports. This Mediterranean presence, certainly more commercial than political, was spearheaded by the Phoenicians 1,000 years before Christ. The Carthaginian ships created the grand myths about the second Spanish culture, the Mediterranean culture, traveler, foreign. It is the culture of Hercules and the bulls, the culture of business and of communication headed by dignified merchants from Tartessos, to which Ezekiel refers. But Tartessos is also the end of the world, the fear of disaster, the portent of a black vacuum, a nullity, where there is only heard a shout, Iliad, ships of Tartessos, so our force has been defeated. At birth, Spain enters with a shout of the Bible, and Spain is finally, once more, the culture of the exocentric, the box without exit, the place to where one escapes, in the same manner that Jonas flees to Tartessos from the presence of the Lord. In the biblical flight of Jonas, far from the presence of God, it is, one can divine a perverse symbol as much of the retreat of Spain into itself, the mountainous, agrarian, and tribal Spain of the interior, as of the parallel temptation to depart from itself, to turn its face to the sea, to the ships, to the challenge of a world far beyond the Pillars of Hercules where the sun sets. This history of conquest and invasion that attracts foreign power towards Spain is repeated by Spain itself in the New World. The Spanish response to the challenge of the other, the Araguas in the Caribbean, the Aztecs in Mexico, and the Quechuans in Peru, was determined by the experience of many centuries when Spain was the conquered land. A conquest, but a benign conquest, while the Phoenicians and later the Greeks limited themselves to creating commercial enclaves in the coast with restricted zones of influence around the ports of Cadiz and Malacca, isolating even more the first Celtic Iberian culture and establishing in compensation a new culture, a new Mediterranean culture of the vine, olives, shellfish, grains, a monetary system, and urban life. In reality, the lack of urban development in the interior is that which contrasts the most with the flourishing coastal marketplaces of the Phoenician and Greek presence in Spain.